Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hey, we'd like to welcome our guest, Stan Padgett, today. He's a transformational strategist and a business trial attorney from Florida. Stan, tell folks how I met you.
You and I were at a speaking event in Boston, I believe at the Harvard Club of Boston, and I got to hear the interesting story that you told, and I thought, I got to meet this lady.
Well, I was looking around for some normal folks to hang around with, and I saw you and your wife, Linda, and I said, you know, they look kind of normal, so I might need to go meet this fellow.
She clearly is. Now, she is a saint because she's been putting up with me for almost 45 years.
Oh, now I want to hear that story.
All right. I can tell you that story. I met this little girl when I was a senior in high school. I had just started as a senior. I was 17. She had just turned 16 a few days before. And it turns out we were both working at the same Burger King. I hadn't met her yet. And she comes in the door one evening while I was working with another the young man who worked at the Burger King, and completely knocked my socks off. When she walked away from the counter, I mean, you got to remember back in the 70s, and Burger King was the orange and yellow polyester shirts.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Paper hat. Well, she turned, the two of them walked away from the stand, and I turned to the guy next to me who had talked to her, so clearly knew who she was. I had 2 handfuls of yellow and orange polyester, and I said, "Who is that?" That was her last date with anybody else ever. That's been 47 years ago.
Oh, that's an awesome story.
Well, we were engaged 3 months later. She had been 16 for all of 3 months when she got engaged, and was 17 when we got married. I was 18.
Oh, now, you know, I tell my sons, my oldest one is 33 and my twins are 28. I tell them to wait. So, you know.
I did wait.
No, you didn't wait. I waited.
Gail, look, I knew, you know, guys don't remember anything. I remember exactly what she was wearing the first time I saw her. And I realized I had to get her before she knew better.
And you did.
I did. And let me tell you something, guys. When you attract a girl like that wearing yellow and orange polyester, you got game.
Exactly.
Stan, Chris and I have been talking. We've spent about the last 6 weeks talking about nursing home abuse. And she had done some research last week as we were wrapping that series up about divorce during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Chris, share with Stan just a little bit of what you saw.
Well, it looks like divorce is pretty much on the rise, especially for newly married folks. 5 months or less when this pandemic hit, it's causing a big influx in divorce and separations. And I was rather shocked. So when the numbers are truly in, probably next year, I think we're all going to be shocked at the divorce rate right now, with people, you know, together during the pandemic.
I think you're right. One of my very good friends is a lady named Dr. Sherry Campbell. She's a PhD therapist out in California, written some wonderful books. But Sherry said that depression is up.
Yes.
Abuse is up. Divorce is up. And it's partly this enforced lack of other interaction that we're all so used to.
Absolutely. I have to interject really quickly, but on my marriage, we were together for about 4 months, day in, day out. And it was tough. We're still having residuals from it. We're working through it.
That's why we called you in, Stan. I said, I know somebody that probably has some answers, because, you know, the landscape has changed with relationships across the board during the pandemic. And, you know, we want to do something to help people and bring them some information that something, something can be made right out of it. Every bad situation always has a light at the end of the tunnel. So Stan, the floor is yours.
Well, let's talk about what's happened and why it's had the effect that it's had, like on Chris and on other people. We live very busy lives, and these electronic beasts that we are tethered to, and in reality, this is an addiction for most people. They say, oh, I'm not addicted. Turn it off for 24 hours. I don't mean silent. I don't mean vibrate. Turn it off for 24 hours and don't look at your laptop, and see how many people say, oh, well, I can't do that. Or, well, my children might need me. Now, all three of us are old enough that when we grew up, there was a rotary dial phone, and sometimes it was a shared line. Now, there are people listening to this who don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But that meant that when our parents went out and we were home, they couldn't reach us and we couldn't reach them. When we went out away from the house, they had no way to track us. Thank goodness. There was no GPS tracker in our shoes. And also there was what I like to call plausible deniability. There were no video cameras around to record all the dumb stuff we did when we were teenagers.
Yeah.
So there is no permanent record. That's why we call it plausible deniability. But what's happened is, with all this electronic noise that we live with literally every waking hour, we're busy. We allow ourselves to be made busy, and we almost use it as a sedative.
Oh, that's an interesting term. I like that, Stan.
Well, think about it. We keep busy because it keeps us from having to deal with the real issues in our lives, the ones that are A, the most meaningful, B, have the most potential to bring joy, but C, typically start out with pain. So we sedate ourselves electronically and with busy. And pandemic took away the sedatives. It enclosed us and enforced a connection that we weren't used to and weren't prepared for.
So people that have struggled during the pandemic, I was home with my family in Georgia for almost 12 weeks. We could only go pick up food to go, and one person could go to the grocery store. Everybody couldn't go, and we only went at certain times, depending on, certain days of the week. It started out with zip code. And then since I was the oldest one in the group, I was like, I'll go at 7 a.m., when they call it the seniors. So I guess I'm dating myself. But we live in a rural area, and I think it was probably less stress on us than it was people who were in town, because, we have livestock, we have a pond to go fishing in, we have a boat to go out fishing on a river. So my sons were able to be outside in nature some during those weeks, March, April, May, when the early pandemic in Georgia. But people that were indoors all the time that couldn't go out, like in Spain, for example, they couldn't go outside of the house but an hour a day for exercise. And children were not allowed out at all. They had to stay in the house all the time.
Well, look, I'll give you an example. One of my good friends lives in Indianapolis, has a blended family that has 5 children, and had her mother visiting. They were able to go out to a restaurant last night, but the restaurant would not allow them all to sit at the same table. They were too close. It was too many people. You're telling families who live together that you can't sit together in a restaurant. There's a level of insanity that's going on in this process that isn't helping anybody mental stability.
Absolutely.
But you're right, Gail, about I now live on 6.5 acres too. I've got a barn, I've got fields, I've got fruit trees, and I can walk outside in my area. But I live in the Tampa Bay area. We have, fortunately we now have the Super Bowl champions, but when Tom Brady came down here last spring, the only place he could find to practice with his receivers was in a public park, and they threw him out of that.
They closed all the playground equipment down in all the public parks in Georgia. Even the school playgrounds, where local kids could walk to, they still are closed. If you can believe that, they are still closed.
Well, and you think about where most people live. I mean, and we did until last fall, and we moved in part because of what was going on, but just it was time for us to get out of the way. Even if you live in a neighborhood in traditional suburbia, and you can't go out. You're not supposed to be on the sidewalk, or you're supposed to be wearing a mask. You're not letting your children out. Think about how few parents spent that much time with their children before this pandemic. And particularly if you got young children, now that you can't take them to daycare and get them out of your hair for a little while, you've got all of the children that used to be in school. Your teenagers are now home all the time. Bless your heart.
God forbid.
My daughter's got 3. I mean, she's got 3 teenagers, a 13, a 15, a 17. Fortunately, hers are great, and they're a quarter mile down the road, and they all come down there and deal with their problems. So they're all great. But I mean, and particularly young mothers who've got infants, small child, and toddlers, and they have zero break. There is no relief for a moment.
No.
So you get people physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, emotionally exhausted. And they're physically afraid. You know, Gail, you guys know what that does to your cortisol levels and what stress does to your body. So you are physiologically, mentally, emotionally, and often spiritually, because you couldn't go to church either.
Right.
Your every support system you had got jerked away from you.
Mm-hmm. It did.
And then you said, now we want you to do this on your own while we spend, 24/7 news cycle terrifying you on a daily basis.
Right.
Well, and Chris's wife, Mary, is an essential worker. She works, 12, 14, 16-hour shifts at the local hospital, and she's wearing PPE all the time. And so it's, and every day, and she works with the COVID patients. So, I work with oncology patients, so I'm in a different part of the hospital, but, I'm still wearing the same gear when I'm in a cancer center.
Right.
So you have this fear of getting this treacherous disease that's new to everybody. And I work more now than I did a year ago, more hours every week.
My daughter is a nurse, and she works at Moffitt Cancer Center, and she works at another hospital in the COVID floor. So she's doing the same thing, Chris,
Right.
your wife is, and that Gail's doing. But she said, now when all the PPE is really available, she said, literally, I walk before I go into every room, I gown and double glove.
Yes.
And as soon as I'm walking out, I throw it away. And if they call me once I've cleared the threshold to go back in the room, I got a gown, glove, walk back in. She said, I actually feel safer on the COVID floor than I do on the other floors where you don't have to do all of that stuff.
Right. I've heard that.
A lot of patients are getting outpatient infusions. I don't know if it's remdesivir, but a lot of the hospitals will have them coming up the same elevator, because most of the cancer centers have some isolation rooms in it, where patients may get chemo by themselves. Well, in a lot of the hospitals, that's what the COVID patients are using to get these outpatient infusions. So guess who's using our cancer patients are using the same elevators.
Yeah, who have zero immune system.
Right, zero immune system. I'm using the same elevators because I'm going in, after I get COVID screened, I'm going into the same place where the cancer patients are, in the infusion center. So, there's that silent fear that I live with every day. And, I got my first vaccine, Chris, 2 weeks ago? And I get the second on the 24th of April because it wasn't available here in Georgia. I've been waiting 12 weeks to get a shot.
My wife just got her first one this past week, and I haven't been able to find one that I could get because the 4-week appointment was during some meetings that I have to do, and I couldn't. Yeah. If I had a 24-hour, I'm down for the count, I just couldn't do it. So now they've reduced it to age 16 in Florida. So for when I get it, and to me, not only the fear of getting it, it's the long-term fear of it as much for me would be bringing it home to my wife or my children or my grandchildren.
Right. Yes.
Right. It's not just about you getting it. And Frank, it scares you worse to give the carrier.
Well, Chris and Mary both had COVID. They both had it.
We did. Thanksgiving. But luckily, Mary didn't bring home, which is her biggest fear. We had one relative come, and she had it. She was exposed at work, and she gave it to us. We did have it through Thanksgiving. It was rough, but we didn't have to go to the hospital, thank God.
Well, that's great.
I remember one night watching Chris post on Facebook asking neighbors, do you have any ginger ale? Well, we have something awesome on the internet called Instacart. I got on Instacart and ordered Chris ginger ale. I don't think it got delivered until the next day because
Then
they
they
were
had
both so sick they couldn't go to the store.
But see,
It was awful.
we're all talking. What we're talking about is an experience that even in our lifetimes is unique.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
and you go back and you talk about these the 20 somethings, the millennials, these younger couples that you were talking about. They literally have no experience of being cut off socially, and
No.
no experience of enforced isolation, and no experience of the level of fear both about the disease and the vaccine. And the constant, you know, when I was growing up, there were three channels: ABC, NBC, CBS, and usually you could only adjust your rabbit ears to get two of them.
That was same thing at my house, probably same thing at Chris's in Texas.
Well, so what we got now, though, we got 500 channels of 24/7 content, and they got to create content. And a lot of the content is loosely based in anything scientific, and I'm not sure some of it's not designed to create panic.
Yes.
But so
Right.
that's the situation that people live in, and they were given no tools, no advice on how to navigate that, on how to say, hey, let me shift the thinking, because none of us can control what happens to us, but we can control how we react or respond to it. That's a choice, but we have to be taught there's a choice, and we have to be taught how to make better choices. What if you said this pandemic, for many busy parents, if they said, this is a unique opportunity. I will get to spend more time with my child in the next few months than I would ever have had probably till the time they were 18, 19, 20 and left home. I also have more of an opportunity to be my child's primary teacher than a bunch of school administrators who may or may not share my beliefs, my values, my anything.
Yeah.
Instead of being indoctrinated by somebody else, this can be my opportunity to teach, to strengthen my relationship with my wife, my husband, my partner, my children. And if you started out with that mindset, think about how the creative ideas the three of us could come up with in 10 minutes of, wow, we can make this a blast. Four walls don't have to be a prison. They can be a palace.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But we made them into a prison because that's what we were made to feel like, prisoners.
Right.
We had to stop watching the COVID updates from the White House every day. I finally just had to turn it off because working in healthcare, I'm hearing one thing from doctors at hospitals that are practicing clinical medicine versus our Washington administrators who may have never walked into a real hospital, unless they had their appendix out.
It's interesting that, and I have done the same thing, Gail. I've shut all that stuff off for months now because I just don't have I don't have the knowledge to evaluate. If you got two highly qualified physicians or researchers with absolutely different opinions, I don't know enough to evaluate in any rational way who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
So I've said, look, I'm not going to do that. But that's part of the challenge of this whole process is that people will say, well, the science, except that they're very well qualified scientists on one hand and on the other saying exactly opposite things.
Right.
And that just adds to the level of fear and confusion. It's a vacuum of real information. But I think that's the society we live in. And I don't think that's going to change. So what we need to do is teach people how do you deal with whatever's coming your way, right?
Right.
Step one is realize somebody might imprison your body. They cannot imprison your mind. And what goes on in your mind is your choice. I have worked with for a number of years, women in particular who have horrible sexual abuse histories, some going back as early as 6, 7 years old. And they're 40, 30, 40, 50 years old. They're still trying to deal with that. And one of the things I tried to help them understand is your experiences don't have to define you. They can refine you into something better. If it makes you more compassionate, more empathetic, more capable of nurturing others and strengthening others and lifting them when they're facing difficult situations. But I think part of the challenge is we've tried to find new ways to distract ourselves because a lot of our old distractions got taken away from us.
Right.
And we have not been intentional about our use of time. How am I good? If you get up in the morning and you say, as a business person, I know Gail's got a million things to do. She's got so many things on her plate. She has to prioritize what do I have to accomplish today? What do I need to accomplish? And what can wait? What's just not important? What if you did that in the morning with your relationship? So in my relationship with my partner today, what do I need to make happen? What outcome do I need to create today for me and for that person? And how do I go about doing it? I use one thing that is really simple, and I think it's a great tool because it's free. Yellow sticky pad. Go get a yellow sticky pad. There you go. In front of you. Okay. If you will take that pad and every day for 30 days, write one thing you love or appreciate about your partner. And every single day has to be different. And you put it somewhere they will find it. It forces you to think about the things that you love, appreciate, respect about them, which changes your emotions. And receiving them changes their emotions. Now, the first day,
Christine, it's a great idea, Stan.
You said you've been in a challenge a little bit. You still got a little resistance. Well, that probably means that the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these that she gets, she's going to go, what's she want now?
You already know her.
Sort of like when I was younger and I would bring home flowers, they were like, what did you do now? I just brought you flowers. So she's going to have to learn to trust it. But what'll happen is, as it's consistent and she gets to see herself through your eyes, she will start to look for that note every day. If you stick it a different place, you're gonna notice her going from place to place to place looking for that note because she wants and needs that affirmation.
I already have it ready.
I love that.
As soon as we're done, I'm gonna go stick it on the mirror.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
Okay. Well, what it'll do, it changes your emotions, it changes her emotions, and it changes both of your behavior, which allows you to heal and then strengthen. And Gail, what is the first thing you do? If somebody comes into you and you're in the ER as a nurse and they've got a wound, a cut, what's the very first thing you're going to do?
See if I can stop the bleeding and the pain at the same time. That's the first thing you do.
Now, once you've done that, before you can sew it up or have the doctor sew it up, what has to happen?
Well, I'm looking around to see if they got a family member with them. And then they have to sign an informed consent form before you can do it.
You're going all lawyer on me here, Gail.
I'm looking at the legal stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking. I want you to talk to me about the nursing stuff. Tell me what has to happen before you can sew up a wound.
You have to clean it.
Perfect. What that means is when you have a wound in your relationship, you don't just sew it up or paper over it. You got to clean it all out. Everything. And that means, Gail, how clean does it have to be before you can sew it up safely?
It's going to have to be, any debris has to be removed. It's got to be, I'm going to say spotless as much as you can get a wound clean.
That's exactly right. And
I just had the stitches right here. Yeah.
If you fix it and you put it back in the spiritual context, and you say, if somebody's trying to go through a process of repentance, what's the first thing that has to happen? They have to get it all out. They have to be able to their priest, their pastor, their bishop. And I served as a bishop of a congregation of about over 600 for 5 years. And I had a number of conversations where somebody would come in and say, Bishop, this is what's happened. And I need you to help me through this. Okay. I'd listen. I'd say, okay, is that everything? Oh, that's it, Bishop. I promise. Are you sure? Yeah, that's it. That's everything. All right. Well, let's talk again about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks, they come back in and say, Bishop, I didn't quite tell you everything. There's a little bit more. And sometimes you go through that process 3, 4, 5, 6 times because it's just the same as cleaning out Gail's cut. Until you get all the dirt out, you can't sew it up and make it stronger because you don't want to. You heal the dirt within. What happens? You get infection, necrosis, all kind of bad stuff.
It just
so in
builds
relationship,
up, manifests.
That's it.
That is a great analogy.
Well, I think it's an awesome analogy.
So what you do is
simple.
Well, it is. It is simple. It's kind of, the Marines, like, here's what we're doing. And look, some of my best friends are Marines. I love them. And my son went to Parris Island. So great things happened for my family at Parris Island. But at the end of the day, relationships are living organisms. They are growing or dying every single day. And they grow or die by choice of the two people who are in the relationship. So you have a choice every morning. Is my relationship going to be stronger tonight when I go to bed than it was this morning? The other analogy I like to use is pilots. What's the first thing they do when they get in the airplane? They check all the systems, but they file a flight plan before they get in the airplane. Where I'm going to go and how I'm going to get there. And what's the last thing they do before they walk off the airplane? They shut off the engines and they close out the flight plan. They look at every deviation from what was intended, why it happened, how it affected them, and close it out. Your morning idea of what I'm going to do with my relationship today, and it can be with my spouse, and it's with each child individually. We'll get to that in a minute. At the end of the day, ask yourself how you did. Gail's got her checklist. Did I get done the important things I had to do today? Did critical things get done? Did the rest of them get done? What did I defer? What do I need to do? She's got her plan for tomorrow when she goes to bed. Okay, close out your flight plan for your relationship. Did I make it better today? Then if you give your subconscious mind that challenge to come up with something creative that I can do tomorrow that will make my partner feel loved, that will light them up. And then go to sleep.
Wow.
That's a wow plan, Stan.
That is. And never mad at each other. I learned that.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's hard.
We just need to be intentional. We need to realize that these are hard times. Right. And you're right. The statistics are horrific. Yeah. The number of 4, 5, 6 month marriages that are ending is like, wait a second.
Right.
I'll tell you the reality is the book that I wrote that's run across the bottom is I wrote a book that really deals with how to make sure you're compatible before you get married.
Right.
We have people who spend way too much time focusing on the wedding. They spend an enormous amount of time, energy, and money on a wedding and zero time planning time, energy, and money planning a marriage. Which do you want? You want a wedding for a day or a marriage for 15 years?
Exactly. And it's interesting. There's a show on TV called 90 Day Fiancé. And these people are getting married, within 90 days. They don't even know each other. And their divorce rate is astronomical after 90-day marriage. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way it is with anyone. You need to plan it out. You need to know each other. You need to have that camaraderie, that communication, and that understanding of each other.
Yeah, and I tell you that there are 4 questions every couple ought to discuss. The 4 critical things that they need to talk about before they say I do. It's sex, money, children, and religion. Because if you are fundamentally misaligned on any one of those, the odds of a successful long-term marriage go down. If you're misaligned on 2 of them, the odds are nearly 0. 3, just call it off. Reality is you should be aligned at least at a basic level on all 3 of those, all 4 of them. If you do it right, you have the option of creating a foundation that you can build an absolutely amazing marriage from. Mm-hmm. And, we have so many people in our lifetimes that have gone through at least one divorce. So then you have the second and third marriages where you're trying to take my children, your children, maybe our children, my culture, your culture. Now we got to create an us culture. You magnify the challenges wildly.
Right.
Yes, you do. An interesting point on my research real quickly. In the last few months, births are up. It's kind of a good thing. You know, I mean, there's some happiness in there somewhere. All these babies are born, happiness. So.
But now the question is, are the parents going to be together to raise the baby?
Right.
Right.
Because that's
now you have a point.
Well, you know, even my daughter, I'm not going to say how, she graduated from high school more than 20 years ago. Even during her high school years, most of her close friends were from single parent homes, typically lived with their moms. So I ended up becoming dad to most of her high school friends, the good girlfriends. And there are still some of them who, as adults, every time I see them, they run up and throw their arms around me and say, I need a dad hug.
Oh,
Children, they need two parents, reality. They need two.
Yes, yes, I agree.
And my limited experience in dealing with youth and in my own family and in the church setting is teenage girls need a certain amount of male affection, typically. And whether that's for their growth, self-esteem, I'm not a clinical researcher. I'm not even going to posit, only that my experience is that they need it. If there is a safe male relationship to get that from, whether it's a father, a grandfather, whatever, they are far less likely to get in trouble at an early age because they're getting that need fulfilled in a way that's safe. And that's like, if a lot of people say we vaccinate our children, we're about to vaccinate the whole country. If you have an opportunity to vaccinate your children against that kind of pain, why are we not doing it? You know, we're spending billions and billions of dollars on junk, and we're not educating the kids. We're not giving them an environment where they have models of loving parents. I mean, children learn how to be wives, mothers, fathers, sons, parents from their own parents. And if their living examples aren't good ones, they start behind the 8 ball. I teach parents all the time, look, your children are watching you all the time. When you think they are, when you think they're not, and when you wish they were not. They're watching all the time. And they're learning. And say, well, that's what mom does.
Well, I think role models are critical. My grandparents raised us. My parents didn't. My biological parents did not. So, being raised by that generation from the Great Depression, there was always a lack in the house, lack of food, lack of money, lack of health care. And I found my role models in the church. I watched other successful couples and I thought, okay, that's not like that at my house, but they seem to be smiling a whole lot more. And I kind of figured if I did what they did, then maybe it was the right thing. So that was the path that I chose to follow. We're watching other role models. Maybe I was lucky that I had that in the church. You
definitely were. But I'll tell you, if you think about role models in every, Tiger Woods has a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach. LeBron James has a coach. They have trainers. And then they have mentors. So, and in business, they always tell you, find someone who has what you want and ask them to mentor you and learn from somebody who's got what you want. Mm-hmm. Why do we not apply that same thing in our relationships? Teach kids to look for solid mentors, even if it's not their parents. And I have also found that when your children get to be teenagers, there's this force field that goes up every time mom or dad opens their mouth. It's like, whoa, they can't hear something. But my children could hear you, Chris. My children could hear you, Gail. Your children could hear me. We could say exactly the same things. But if you're saying it, there's no force field because you're not mom or dad to my kids. They go, well, I like Gail. I like Chris. They make a lot of sense. Maybe I better think about this. So there really is a little bit of that, making sure that you have friendships and relationships with people who share your values, because there will come a point where your kids need somebody other than you. And the pandemic has made that even more difficult. Even the people that you know, like, and trust, how do you spend time with them when you can't get out of your 4 walls? Maybe you use technology. But that's always been something that's helped. It helped with my kids, and I was able to help other people with theirs. because the teenagers did not have the same resistance to what I said that my children would.
Right.
And as we kind of recognize that limitation on our own authority or moral authority with our children, say, well, you know what? I might not can beat them, but I can outsmart them. Let me just do something. Let me go find somebody else to help me here.
Right. You know, I have to reiterate something you said, just to interject really quickly. You said back a few minutes ago that with two parents and a father, with a father especially, you feel safe. You said that word safe. And I had that with my parents because they were married for 65 years. And I always felt safe because of my father. He was a very strong Texan man. And he was very strict, but I always felt safe and loved by my father. And that's something that I've always had and I still have today. And I think a lot of that comfort and that safeness did kind of get me through this COVID time as well. Because there was a lot of reflection back on my parents, because I just lost both my parents just before COVID hit. But I still had their safeness and their comfort and their love in my heart. So it did help me get through this. But you were absolutely correct on that, spot on with the safe, having a father figure in your life. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss. I lost my dad in October too, and I had my first Christmas as an orphan.
Right. Me too.
And I thought, I wasn't ready. I was never going to be ready. But it was to the point where it was for him to stay any longer would have been purely selfish for me because it wasn't for him.
Right.
He would not. He didn't want to be here in that condition. I wouldn't have wanted to be if I were in his condition. So we finally, I told my brother, I said, Hank, you just need to tell Dad it's okay to go. That we'll be all right.
Right.
Yeah.
Still hard to talk.
Tough.
No, that's what those patients have to hear. All the patients I work with are end-stage disease, Stan. All of them, not just one. All of them.
Yeah, it's so hard, Gail. I don't know how you do that every day. My
It's
heart
hard.
goes.
It's hard. Chris hears a lot of the stories, and I fight a lot of legal battles with insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid and state agencies. And if I didn't have a couple of wonderful attorneys in Atlanta to support me sometimes with, legal action if it's required, I couldn't do the service to these families that I do. But, I get a lot of calls in the middle of the night, and if they're within drive distance of anywhere around the Atlanta area up to 3 hours, I'm there when that patient crosses over. That's just part of what I do as an advocate. But it's not easy. And we've lost so many people, during the pandemic. People don't understand the grieving process. And I think we talked about that about 3 weeks ago, didn't we, Chris? The phases of grief. But don't you think people are grieving, Stan, the pandemic, and that's had a lot of impact on relationships and family dynamics this year?
I think it is. I'm not sure I have thought about it in those terms, Gail, but I think it's an appropriate label to apply to it, because I hear a lot of people saying things will never be the same again. And so in effect, they're grieving a lifestyle that's kind of been lost. And now they're calling it, what's the new word, Gail? It's not pandemic, it's something else, endemic or whatever, that basically it's going to be around forever.
Endemic, yeah.
I don't believe that. There's people changing the name of grief. I had a magazine call me the other day and want me to do an interview on eco grief, like grieving changes in the environmental climate. I was like, look, I'm a healthcare practitioner. I'm not the weatherman. You need to call up Al Roker for that interview.
There you go. Well, one of the things I dealt with as a bishop a lot was people going through the grieving process from losing family members. Even divorce is a grieving process.
Yes.
Right. And one of the things is that people need to understand is that there is no one size fits all grief process.
That's right.
Some people I found need a lot of people around them. They need a lot of interaction and a lot of very direct support. Other people need exactly the opposite. They need space to process, to grieve, to do it on their own time. So there's no right way or wrong way to grieve. There's no timeline for grief. Now, if you're literally unable to function 3 months after the event happens, then you need professional help. But if somebody says, well, you should be over that, my daughter lost 2 children. Her first child died from a congenital heart defect. About 8 years later, her 5th child died of a choked to death on a grape when he was 4. Oh. And somebody said, you should be over that. You don't get over that. You deal with it, but you don't get over it. So those kind of comments are not helpful. They're not supportive. They're not medically or factually accurate. Grief is a process that every individual goes through differently. And if you're really loving and supportive, you just say to somebody, Gail, Chris, I know you're grieving. Please tell me what I can do to support you the best, and I'll do that. Whether that's call you daily, not call you for the next 30 days, bring you meals, take you out to dinner, just communicate to me what you need, and that's what you'll get. And that's the one thing I would encourage people who are grieving to do is don't have people guess. Don't think that people don't care about you because they aren't intuitively knowing what you need. Half the time you don't know what you need. How are they supposed to?
Yes.
Be open enough to take a risk and say, Chris, it would really help if my wife didn't have to cook dinner tonight. Could you bring a meal over? That would save our lives. You'd go, great. But now the other thing I've given you a way to win. To not only know that you were doing something that meant something, but it's concrete, it's direct. You can take action. If people will just sell us what we need, stress or crisis doesn't create character. It reveals character. And so what we've seen the best and the worst of humanity come out. From my perspective, by far, we've seen the best. We've seen healthcare workers doing amazing and ridiculous things in terms of the hours they work, the conditions they're working under, and they're doing it over and over and over, day and day and day. Nothing but love and respect. Right. But we've also seen the other side of humanity.
Yeah.
The challenge for us is to say, you know what? I'll take the Gales. I'll take Chris's wife. I'll take the people that are showing that they are innately human. They are worthy of love, worthy of respect. And I'm not going to let the few color my view of the many.
Absolutely. Well said. You teared me up a little bit there.
Oh, I know. I'm about to choke up, Stan.
We're not going to go there today.
Then I'll let you guys go the train. If you get something else you want me to talk about, I will. I
think
perfect.
People need to hear this, and that's why Stan's going to be with us for the next 3 weeks. After today, we've got 3 more weeks with Stan because I think people need some emotional coaching, Stan, for some emotional healing from the pandemic. People are afraid to talk about it. I have a big mouth. I'll say anything. But it's because I'm a patient's voice. I learned 40 years ago. I could tell the doctor what was wrong with a patient because they're scared to tell him, or nobody was going to speak up and it was going to be treated.
Well, all of my clients and all the people that know me know that if you ask me a question, you really better be prepared to hear what I think, because I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yes.
There you go.
And I don't know how to communicate except directly. I think there's too much lost in translation when we try to beat around the bush or give clues and I will tell you straight up, men don't communicate in clues. We don't get it. We don't get little ones. We don't get big ones. We don't get huge ones. We don't get it. I'll give you something. This is your end of things. Any man that you know is exactly like your smartphone. It will do nothing, and he will do nothing unless you touch him or talk to him.
So are you saying we need to be very direct in giving instructions to men, Stan?
Absolutely, because we're not trying to make life difficult for you or be. We just absolutely don't understand what you're asking.
I have to write that down.
women have the ability to communicate in gestures and tonality and the words you say and don't. No guy ever got off of a conversation and evaluated what you did say, didn't say, how you said it, or what you said. Never. I want to go to Baskin Robbins and I want to go see this movie. Done. I got it. I can do that.
Right.
I can. You set me up to win. Well, I'm not sure what I'd like to do. Why don't you plan today? No, because what you really want is for me to read your mind, and I can't.
Yeah.
So that's, right. I tell you, maybe the next time we talk, we really ought to talk about communication, because there's so much bad information and simple lack of understanding of the differences in the way that men and women communicate, that if we could teach people to do that more effectively, you talk about taking some of the stress out of relationships. Oh, really? That's what you want? That's true. Oh, that's easy. I'll do that.
That
Even
is
my
so
therapist
true.
says that. Yeah.
That is
Communication
so
is probably, I would say, 60% of our problem in our relationship, and we're both women. But our therapist says the same thing. We have marriage counseling and communication.
I'll give you some practical things the next time we talk, and we'll simplify your communication. I'll actually give you a formula to measure the quality of your relationship.
That's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm going to start with the sticky notes today.
I think the sticky notes is the greatest and most creative thing I've ever heard. I hope everybody starts that today.
I've got mine written out. It's ready.
Tell our audience how they can find you. We've had your website up on the banner going across the show today.
You can go to, the easiest way is to open a web browser and go to Stan, STAN 360.com. And it will pull up the page. It'll pull up the links to the law firm, to the relationship course is under, it's called Relationship Magic Academy. There is a course there. It's a digital course built for couples. It's built for single people. You can, all of the assets are online. And if you want it, if Gail would like for me to do that this time or next time, I'll give you guys a code where you can get it for way less than the listed price. Because I'd really like for people to get the opportunity while they're still confined to strengthen their relationship, because it can come out so much better than it was before you started.
That'd be awesome, Stan, if you could give the audience a discount code. And hold off and do that next week, because they have to come back and listen again.
All right. We'll do it next week.
I've been to Stan's website, actually, and it's very maneuverable, very user-friendly. It's really a nice website, so guys, don't be afraid of it.
I would encourage people to buy your book. I've read Stan's book, Unveiled. I thought it was brilliant, and it's not just because he's my friend. It's because the information in it is real. So, Stan, if I ever get married again, I'm going to use it.
Good. Use it to tip your spouse, because one of the things the book teaches people is how to identify and attract your ideal mate. So if you're single and want to be in a relationship, that's a great place to start. How do you find somebody you could actually be compatible with for the rest of your life? And not just compatible, joyful.
And,
what's the name of the book again?
It's called Unveiled. It's called Unveiled: Secrets to a Marriage That Lasts Forever.
And it's on Amazon and Kindle. It's on Kindle and Amazon, Chris. The link's on my Facebook page, and it's been running across the banner down here. I would encourage the audience to get that. You know, if you've got Kindle, get the Kindle edition. You can read it this afternoon. It's a pleasant read. It's an easy read. And you can say, you know, the author. You know, you can send us questions. Stan will be back next week. So thank you for taking time from your busy schedule, Stan. Chris, tell folks how they can reach you.
Well, I have a great Facebook page called Justice for Marion. Marion, Justice for Marion. Guys, go message me in there if you have any questions or concerns. And I'm always available.
And you can find me, Gail, at medicalbill911.com. I have a very busy Facebook page. And, you know, if you type my name in on Google, Gail Tralco, you're going to find me because I'm out there.
She's out there.
I'm out there. You'll find me. And I hope you like what you see. But I just feel like relationships have changed so much during the pandemic. People are more rude, even at the gas station, in line at a restaurant. And if there's, you know, Stan, I think there's a lot we can learn from you. Not only can you use what you would do in a marriage, but, you know, it's just people every day. Okay, y'all. We'll see you next week on Healthcare 911 with Stan Padgett.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.